Ernest Holmes, in The Science of Mind, has many beautiful poems, but this one he ends with, "I am the child of joy, and to all who will I give life." So we truly are celebrating the rebirth of the universal Christ consciousness. I have always called it the universal Christ consciousness. There are some who may call this divine presence, which is the presence of God in humanity. Some may call it Baha'u'llah, some may call it the Buddha, some may call it the Atman. It's all the same. No matter what the instrument is through which this divine love shines, it's God in us, Emmanuel, God in us. So, as Claudine Whitaker, who was the founder of the Religious Science Church in Chicago years ago, said, "We're beginning to understand that the infinite seeks to reveal itself in all human beings. As we unfold in our ability to think constructively, we evolve in our capacity to be an incarnation of God. The difference between us and Jesus and other great spiritual teachers is a difference in degree, not kind. Jesus distinctly taught this. The works I do, ye shall do also." So as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the children of God. That's beautiful. So what we're doing is touching the purity and the innocence of our own true nature, our own inner being, which is why today we are discussing becoming as a child. Remember how Christmas was for you, those who celebrated Christmas, or remember how Hanukkah was when you were a child? How there were just the lights, there were the rituals, there was the music, there was the food, and there were the gifts, and there was this wonderment, this beautiful sense of awakening to something that was part of the mystery, and yet very real and very tangible, especially when it came with bows on it or it had a tail that was wagging. Something wonderful was taking place, and we could hardly sleep. Do you remember any of that? Do you remember how all you needed to do was be there? You didn't have to go shopping, you didn't have to cook, you didn't have to plan anything. You just had to be there. I'm inviting us all to return to that sweet place right now, where we become as a child. And a child is innocent. A child has no regrets. A child has no compunctions many times. So go ahead and get rid of your compunctions. The child in us is really the presence of God within us. And except you become as a little child, you do not enter the kingdom of heaven. And what do we know the kingdom of heaven to be? What do we know heaven to be? Uranos, which is what? That which is forever and ever expanding. Our consciousness is forever and ever expanding, but it begins with the very simple birth within the cradle of our own hearts. And so we become as a little child, which means give it all up and just surrender. Just surrender to the goodness, to the love, to the compassion, to the beautiful sense of generosity that's going on all around us, whether it's our giving tree where we're supporting the homeless shelter, whether it is what you're doing for each other and for the loved ones in your lives. And in fact, probably the greatest gift that we give each other, and to people who don't even know us if we're walking down the street, is the awareness that we are opening our hearts and our minds and our hands to be the presence of God in the love in the world. The presence of God's love in the world. And it's a wonderful thing. It's the greatest gift that we can give. Somebody once said, it's not really giving and receiving. What it truly is, when you get down to the heart of it, is giving and re-giving. Now, I'm not talking about the gifts you keep in the closet from last year that when Aunt Sophie comes by, you're going to have something to give her. But I love that notion that we're given to constantly, and the sun really is out. Thank you, Joe, for that. We are being given to, and we are giving constantly, and we are re-giving. The gift of life that's ours, that shines through us and flows through us, that we give to each other all the time, is the gift that we receive just by being alive. That's a beautiful gift that we can forget about sometimes. Getting so busy, got to get this done, got to get that done. Remember that little technique I taught you? I love it, I love it, I love it. I use it myself sometimes. Got a problem, got this big thing going on in your head, right? Anybody ever have a big thing going on in your head? And usually when you have a big thing going on in your head, you're looking down, right? Oh, and there's a frown. I've told you about frowns, haven't I? Do I need to tell you again? Yes. All right. It takes about 101 muscles to frown, and only 4 to smile. Now that's efficient. Isn't it a lot more efficient to smile than to frown? And then you get these things. I was in the grocery store one day, and there was a mother there with her little baby in a stroller and a little boy maybe about 3 years old. And he looked at me, and he looked at his mother, and he said, "Mommy, what are those stripes on her face?" And she explained it to him. Well then, you're going to get bigger stripes in here if you frown too much. All right, so 101 to frown, 4 to smile. So my teacher Barney, Earl D. Barnum, my beloved teacher in Second Papa, taught me a long time ago that if you don't smile, if you suppress a smile, that the edges of your mouth start to go down, right? And keeps going down. Many of you know the answer to this, don't you? Down, down, and down, and turns into big hips. It's true. Which are you encouraged now to smile more? Okay, so where was I with this? That we bring a smile. We bring a smile to each other. We start by bringing a smile to ourselves. I was going somewhere with it, but I probably didn't. Pardon me? Looking down. Thank you. That was it. We're looking down here, and you are not smiling, and your hips are growing by the minute. And you're looking down at this terrible problem. You don't know what the solution is. You don't know who did this to me. We get into all of those negative things about not taking responsibility for our lives, but wanting to blame somebody. All that is in this downward look. Okay, so this is all we need to do at that time. And that is just to lift the vision. Just look straight ahead. Look at the wall in front of you, or the tree out. If you're outside, look out there. And suddenly the energy shifts. And in this place, you're no longer stuck in that place. There's a lightness that begins. And then the next thing that takes us all the way to solution is looking up all the way. And by that time, often you forget what it was that was down there on the ground that got your attention. Look up. Look up. And when we do, we find that we remember who we truly are. And we find that we remember that we aren't alone ever. That baby child within you is never alone, any more than your own child would be ever alone. We forget. So now let's let that divine little being that you are, and you are a divine little being, let's remember that. Let's let that beautiful little one play and rest. You see, in the busyness of shopping and wrapping and planning and cooking, we need to stop and truly become as a little child. The season becomes so much more beautiful when we do. Just let yourself be loved and nurtured. There's a great, loving, warm, wonderful God blanket everywhere that is always nurturing us, but we're so busy sometimes that no, I can do this, thanks, I've got it. I can manage this, I can manage that. Let's stop managing things for a little while. Doesn't it feel good to think about that wonderful relief of just resting in the divine embrace? You can still do a lot of things, and you can do them even better and more. Let's just open to the divine love that's always giving itself to us. And then we'll have more love to give. There's this childlike self. And I think it's the real self. I think it's that which is so creative within us, that we come up with things we hadn't even thought of before when we surrender to this loving presence within us. And we let ourselves be reborn again. I've shared this with you, but not for a long time. This is a Christmas story. Are you ready for a Christmas story? You got your cookies and your warm milk and your blankie? Okay. From the very beginning of time, there was a promise and a hope that there would be one who would come, who would show the way, one who would be a light in the darkness, who would be inseparable from the Creator, and by their very being would express the truth of human existence. It had been prophesied from times of old that there would be a child born who would rightfully inherit the kingdom, one who, by their very nature, would bring peace, balance, harmony, tranquility, and serenity to this world and to all whom they encountered. The world yearned for this coming, the birth of this child, the fulfilled promise. All the earth and heavens yearned for the coming of this child. Wise men foretold and saw the signs in the heavens, for indeed it was to come to pass that a child would be born, a holy child, filled with knowing, a child filled with love and understanding, one worthy to inherit the kingdom on this earth, one whom by their very being would bring love, and by their very existence would bring understanding of who they truly are and where they truly dwell. The world and even the heavens yearned for the birth of this child, the Christ child, for the universe would not be complete, nor would the world ever be the same again. So it came to pass, in the perfection and fulfillment of time, that this child was brought forth into the world. The child was announced by the angels of heaven that the fulfilled promise had come, for God had become humanity. A new star appeared in the heavens, for a great soul, a master, had been born into the world. And then, in the innocence and wonder of this new experience, you took your first breath. You took your first breath. So the divine has reestablished itself in the world by means of each of us. We are that divine child. We are that beautiful expression of the living life, the love, the light. So let's just let ourselves be filled with this universal presence and compassion and rise up and be what we came here to be. Filled with peace, filled with tranquility, filled with joy, filled with the innocence that we truly are, and bringing something very, very special into this world, unlike anyone else can do. For each of us is that child that takes the first holy breath, and each of us has something magnificent to add to the world, so that we're all co-creating a world that works for all. Will you say with me, I invite the holiness of my divine self to emerge into the world. I connect joyfully with all beloved beings. And so, my beloveds, beginneth our lesson.